Thanks for being here.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I'm happy to be here. I've been counting down the days to try to make it work. Yeah, because I just like talking to you as well. You ask really interesting questions.
All right, so this week I sat down with my friend Michael Campayno. Michael is a performer, and he's also an entrepreneur now that he's created The Collective here in Pittsburgh, which is a unique theater arts program for students who look to make it in the world of performing arts. So sit back, relax, and enjoy my time with star of the stage, screen, and now our own backyard here at The Collective. Please join us as we welcome Mr. Michael Campayno.
Yeah.
Where did you grow up? Where'd you go to high school?
Yeah, so I was born in Pittsburgh. I'm the youngest of 6 kids.
6?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. 6 kids. So my life in Pittsburgh, I feel like was kind of planned out for me, meaning like all my brothers went to Central Catholic in Oakland. So I was just kind of filtered in there, which was great. It was a great experience. I loved that high school. It's where I found my love for theater too. So my life was kind of preceded by my older siblings. My sisters went to Oakland as well. So yeah, I grew up here. I went to St. Maurice, which is crazy to come back to Pittsburgh because these schools aren't even around anymore.
Right.
My grade school's not even
They're like
here.
combining with each other.
Yeah, they're combining.
Yeah.
They're growing. Yeah, it's just it's interesting to come back. So yeah, I went to Central Catholic, and then I went to Carnegie Mellon. So I spent my whole up to my early 20s in Pittsburgh.
It's like the perfect rearing of a child here in Pittsburgh. Is you went to a nice Catholic elementary school. Right. You went to Central Catholic High School.
Yep. And
then you went on to CMU. I mean, you really couldn't write it better for that. Did all 6 of you go to that same path or something similar?
Well, yeah, my oldest sister, Rhea, was the first one in the arts. And it's crazy but this is the Pittsburgh thing, right? You don't realize it until the scope is like zoomed out a little bit. She started doing theater at Oakland, and she was doing theater with Zach Quinto.
Oh, wow.
Who nobody even at that time, everybody was like, yeah, Zach. And then Zach went to CMU. But she kind of started the theater bug in our family, and my older brother, one of my older brothers, Ian, was actually just on Broadway in Some Like It Hot, but he went to Central Catholic, and then he went to Shenandoah University. Yeah. So we all kind of dived into this arts kind of lifestyle. Yeah, my brother draws. My other brother was a drummer. We all just kind have had that.
There's no accountants. There's no bankers.
Well, now there is. That's what's funny. I think like life hits you, and then you're like, oh yeah, we gotta do something. Yeah, we gotta pay bills. So my one brother is in Dallas. My other brother in Pittsburgh worked for PNC. So we all found different ways, but in the essence of us, like at the core of us, we're all still creatives at heart.
Yeah. And which also helps with just about any business you're in. I mean, every single conversation I have in business comes back to, well, if we creatively look at it, or if we do this creatively.
Truly, right? Even sales or anything, right? Yeah. And that is a marketing point, I guess, in like theater education, but it is true. It is like self-development and really brings confidence and just helps you understand who you are as a person and to communicate.
Well, just the fact that the average person really can't just stand up in front of a group of people. Nowadays, they can't even order food at the restaurant.
Yeah, that's wild to me. Is that real?
It is. It is. and I don't know if it's anxiety or if it just, they're so used to typing everything that they want or when they're put in front of a group of people, they're not comfortable expressing what they're thinking or presenting what they're doing. And so, theater, I think, they talk about music. Obviously, it's great for your brain, but I think theater allows you to perform. And that's what we call everything in business is what's your performance? Like that's a major part of it. But so at CMU, you studied musical theater?
Yeah, I studied musical theater. The degree is technically acting with a focus in musical theater, which is really true. It's how they train you. Like we took acting 3 times a week for 3 hours, and we would have voice lessons and things, but we were combined with the acting majors, and it was really a acting degree for sure.
Okay, so I did say that you're allowed to drop names. And listen, if you're watching him and you're like, come on, Michael, stop dropping names. I told him to drop names. I want names, right? Did you go to school? CMU is like the funnel, from what I can tell. I mean, everyone from Ted Danson to, the guy, half the cast of Hamilton, I was obviously playing down to people who maybe don't do a lot of Broadway research. So if I talk about like Hamilton, it's not the essential Broadway show. It's a great show, but it's not exactly what Broadway is. But a lot of them went to CMU. It seems to be the pinnacle of the theater, or one of them for theater. Was there anybody else from your class or around you that you can think of that went on?
Oh, for sure. And I think that's the interesting thing too. We're all in different aspects of theater now, but my best friend is Kyle Seelig, who was in the Book of Mormon. He was the original Aaron Samuels in Mean Girls. Danae Benton was also in my class. A friend of mine who was the original Natasha Pierre. She was nominated for a Tony for it. Gray Henson was a year above us, who was the original, what's his name in Mean Girls, Damien. So yes, it's all around you, and you don't necessarily know that when you're there. And the school doesn't act like that. They just really hold you accountable for your training, and discipline is such a misleading word, but they take it seriously, and they take the training seriously, and they take you seriously. And that's the really beautiful part of it. And yeah, I mean, we could do a whole nother podcast on college auditioning and what colleges are good. And
I might bring Dana Griffith in on that. We could do I mean, I think, and also that would be a great thing for a lot of things. I mean, I know what we're going through right now with my daughter. There's so many different schools out there. Obviously, you see schools like CMU, NYU, all that kind of stuff. There's some great talent coming from schools that you've never heard of before.
That's the thing too. I've been on Broadway with people with business degrees. Right. There is really no path. And that's one of the things I did want to do with the collective too. And in association with Dana is just kind of build a bridge and create information for kids in high school to have a better understanding of where they're going, why they're going there, what's available. Right. That's something I didn't have when I was in Pittsburgh doing musical theater as a high school kid. I didn't really know the next steps. And so what I've been trying to do is really build a bridge because Pittsburgh, yes, has some of the most talented kids. And when I was in New York, I was like, why am I not hearing about like more Pittsburgh names, Pittsburgh kids? When I went to CMU, I felt like I was like the only Pittsburgh person there. Oh, really? Yeah.
Well, let me ask you a question about CMU. Yep. There's so much theater going on at all times. Where do the CMU students actually perform during those 4 years? Are they getting involved in community shows?
CMU is specific in that you're not allowed to perform your first 2 years, your freshman and sophomore year. You're not allowed to perform. You're strictly training, and you're working on tech and things. But at first, kids are going to say that and be like, I'm not getting the experience, but it actually is so beneficial. And I tell my high school students this too, is that if you're constantly performing and in shows, you're not taking the time to train and really work on the craft of it and the skill that leads it to the stage. So within that, our first 2 years are really, really focused on just classwork, which is brilliant. I remember being at the school until like 12 a.m. every night working on my scene. And it just taught me so much about the craft. So when we actually were allowed, I guess, to be on stage, I felt like I knew exactly what I was doing, and it was all just going into the process of rehearsal. College is interesting too, because a lot of colleges do their seasons, but it's not necessarily publicized, or like not a lot of people go to it. Right. So college really is this like summer camp that you go away to, and you just train for 4 years, because when you do get to the industry, they're expecting you to be ready immediately. Right. It's not time to train. So
you're a CMU student, they expect you, they know what to expect from that. I see.
And it's true, and they hold you accountable to that. Yeah. So it's a great time to, and I tell my students this as well, like it's a great time to really just train and focus. They're all, and I remember it. I remember being that headspace of like, what's next? How do I break in? Right. But there's time for that. And the business is always there. It's always going to be there. So a gift of 4 years to fail and be able to fail and rework things and get feedback, it's invaluable.
Right. Well, it just feels like in theater, unlike other things, there's like, I don't want to say a clock, but you feel like you're up against it, because every year there's another crop of extremely talented people with more range, more experience, bigger resumes coming up after you. So you're like, this is my time. And maybe an understanding that maybe this isn't your time and you should take your time to study. Let's just focus on some education for a while.
This podcast and all the programs here on the Mentrepreneur Network are all brought to you and powered by Strategy. Strategy Virtual Marketing is the local entrepreneur's best friend. If you are not being found like you'd like to be found, if you don't have the leads coming in that you'd prefer to have, reach out, strategy.io. Our objective is to help entrepreneurs get to the next level. We are for entrepreneurs, by entrepreneurs. We're here for you. So check us out at strategy.io.
Okay, so CMU, did you graduate? Or I know a lot don't graduate.
So I found my manager the summer of my junior year going into senior year. And we started just self-taping and going up to New York and just auditioning. He was getting me in the rooms for things. And one of the first things he got me in the room for was Sound of Music Live with Carrie Underwood on NBC. And that was the first live musical that they were going to kind of just reproduce. So I remember getting the breakdown and I was like, what does a live musical mean? And I remember asking him, and he was like, I think they're going to film it live. There wasn't much material. We just knew that Carrie Underwood was going to be in it. So it was a big project, and NBC was producing it. So I remember going up this summer, I was going into senior year, and I just auditioned. I took the megabus up. I auditioned. I was taking the megabus back, and my manager called me and he was like, they want to see you again. So I literally hopped off the megabus, I think around like State College. Yeah. I waited at a gas station for 2 hours. And then I caught the next megabus going back to New York. And yeah, I kept in that process of auditioning. It was crazy. It lasted for about like 2 months. So as I was starting school, my senior year, I was still auditioning, and I was in the Crucible, I remember, at CMU. And I was down to the finals. So I remember literally I was in tech for the Crucible. I flew out that night for the final audition. And then I took a megabus home because I had school the next day. So I actually ended up getting the part, which was wild. And you said something, it was so true. There are times that it's your time. There's times that it's not your time. Right. And that's just the roller coaster of the path of acting. So I ended up getting the part. I asked all my teachers, what do you think I should do? I asked my manager. Everybody was like, go do it. Come back in the spring. So I went and did the show. It was great. It was this big produced television event. I got to perform on the Thanksgiving Day parade. It was a very big deal. It was just a lot happening to me. And I still was focused on getting my degree because it was just really important to me and my family. So after The Sound of Music, I went back to Pittsburgh. I was planning on going back to school. And then NBC contacted my manager and offered us a holding deal for a pilot season, which means they're going to pay us this lump sum of money to only audition for their pilots. So it would have been stupid not to take. Yeah. And I struggled with it. And I called Kyle because Kyle also left school to do the Book of Mormon tour. And we talked about it. And it just seemed like it's not always going to be your time. So when things come, you have to take them. Right. So I took it, and I ended up not finishing that year, but they came back, I think a year or two, and they offered me to take some online classes to finish my degree, which was very generous. And I ended up graduating. I don't even know the specific year. I think it was like 2016 when Casey Ka graduated. I got my degree, which I'm actually very grateful for.
You should be. So you did The Sound of Music with Carrie Underwood.
Yeah.
And that was a big event. I didn't know you then, but I remember that. And so you did that. And then following the success of that and the studio liking you, they said, hey, stick around. Yeah. We may want to put you on a sitcom or a TV show or something like that. Right. So first of all, how many auditions were there for Sound of Music? You said it was endless.
Oh my gosh.
Did you just keep seeing the group like whittle down?
Yes. That was exactly it.
I keep getting calls.
It was wild. It was very nerve wracking. And we never knew what was going to be the last round of auditions. So we actually just we were paired with a specific liesel, and every time we would come to the audition, there was just less and less people. Right. It was about a 2 or 3 month period.
Did you beat out any big names for that? Were they not specifically not going for any big names?
There probably were none that I can remember because actually, you know what? Now that you sparked it, I remember one of the auditions, and it was me, like Corey Cott, who was a friend of mine. He went to CMU. He replaced Jack Kelly when Jeremy Jordan did it. He's big now. He's about to be in the heart of rock and roll on Broadway. Derek Klena was there, who was like the current Fiyero in Wicked. So yes, it was all of the like big Broadway names that were active in that moment, and me. And I was this kid from CMU with no professional experience besides like summer stock at CLO. Yeah. It was crazy.
Did you audition for shows?
Yes, for pilot season. Yeah, I auditioned for all the NBC shows. None of them were really a fit. I wonder if it was NBC just being like, hey, great job on the Sound of Music. Like, let's give you some money.
That's nice. Yeah.
Which I was a kid just out of college, like living in New York. So I was like, please, yes, please.
The way that those shows work, I mean, there's pilots, like 20 pilots a year, maybe 1 or 2 last.
Yeah,
so
truly.
You could have gotten into a situation where you're like, I'm going to do this show, and maybe it's not what I want to do, but I'll stick around. Next thing you know, you're back at school anyway, a year later.
Yeah.
So you ended up finishing from CMU, but through that process, when did you end up on Broadway?
Yeah, so this is what I mean, and this is what there are real moments in life that are your time, and there are going to be moments that aren't your time, and it doesn't mean anything personal. It just is the way life goes. So after Sound of Music, I was auditioning for everything, every big show that was coming to Broadway, every huge movie. I would get calls and be like, "Oh, Zac Efron got your part," and I was like, "Yeah, for sure." Yeah.
Worse than losing out to Zac Efron.
Come on,
that happens to me once a week. I swear.
Yeah, it was just
what's this guy out? But I don't get, you know. So you're living in New York at this time. So you obviously got paid enough to survive.
Yeah,
with Sound of Music. So you're like, yeah, they took care of me, which is great.
Yeah.
Were you in the union at this point? Did you have to join to do all that stuff?
Yeah, so I was in Actors Equity since college because I worked with CLO summer season, and they gave me my equity card, which was great. It allowed, and even after that, when I was before I had a manager, I would go up on my own and go to open calls for equity actors and try to get agents, just try to get in. That was kind of the time in New York when you could do more groundwork.
Yeah.
Now is a lot harder.
It's more self-taping now.
It's self-taping, and it's just the rise of the jobs of managers. Yeah. Agents have always been around, but managers are really big now. People who can get you into the room is really important. I felt like in the olden days, I'm 34.
Way back in the teens.
I felt like you could do a lot more groundwork and wait and be seen if you were non-ec, or just have an equity card and be seen. But it's challenging nowadays. I tell students it's hard to go to New York without a plan.
Right.
And that's what half these colleges do, which is great, is create connections and networking. But it's hard to just go up there without a plan, even just money wise.
Right. So you had a manager that kind of guided you through that process. And that's kind of the thing now. You're saying that here we are in 2024 that you need a manager. More than anything, it's not just agents, it's managers now who basically kind of run that show for you.
Yeah. There's a lot
that's better.
I think the industry is always adapting. What I tell students now is that you have everything at your fingertips, like YouTube, TikTok. Yeah. There's many ways for you to be seen, as opposed to when I was growing up in theater. The only way I could be seen is if I got in the room. You know, YouTube wasn't that big in terms of musical theater. We didn't have TikTok, you know, so they have a lot of opportunities to be seen. With that, though, comes the slippery slope of getting famous off one little thing and not having the real craft and skill to back it up.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it is, do you want instant fame that will definitely go away?
Yeah.
And are you ready to create a career that is a marathon? It's not a sprint.
Right. Because you could be back on Broadway in a week.
That's the thing is I left New York at the height of my career. I just did a TV show for HBO. I just came off like originating role for original Broadway cast in the Cher show. And I felt good. I felt fulfilled. And the thing that I was struggling with was that I knew what external validation was. I knew what it was to be a good actor and have people say like, oh, that was great, blah, blah, blah. I was really struggling with internal validation and what made me feel really, really good on the inside. And I was teaching the whole time I was in New York with a company called Musical Theater College Auditions, which is a great company. And I was teaching high school kids and prepping them for college. And there was something so different about that experience as opposed to when I was on stage. And I think the anxiety of the industry just got to me. And I was constantly trying to appease people and hope that I was good and whatever that was. But it really brought me back to my time in college because I was just with mentors and instructors who really cared who I was and what I wanted to do and what I wanted to say and what my opinions were. And they cared about the skill, and they kind of married both of them, and they just put me into the work. And I was so analytical because I'm just an anxiety heady person. And I remember that feeling, and when I was teaching, I was having that same feeling of the way I could communicate to kids and get them to have those aha moments that I had was pretty invaluable to me. So when the pandemic hit, I always knew I wanted to start my own acting studio. I came back to Pittsburgh and I was like, this will be a temporary thing. I'll just teach kids while the pandemic is kind of happening, and I'll see my family, and that will be great. And it just... I always knew I loved it, but it just kind of hit me that this is what I was supposed to be doing, being that mentor and that bridge and that communicator of all the moments I wish I had when I was a younger kid in high school. So it just, again, like life just happens the way it is supposed to. It's really true. Yeah.
No, it's really fascinating to hear you talk about it that way, because it goes back to what we said earlier, which is the right time for you. And so at this moment in your life, your calling, I guess, is to help the next generation of kids. And again, I go back to it because I do see it, and that's how we know each other. But I watch what you do with my daughter and what you do with the kids at your school that made them feel independently that they were your focus and that they are good enough and they can do this. And they don't see that a lot. When you go through, performing arts schools and different community theater and whatnot, they don't really get a chance to really shine on their own. They're normally working in ensembles, and you see, some kids get, these lead parts, and then they shine in it. And I was going to ask about that because you said the anxiety side of it is that, is there a constant feeling among Broadway actors at all times? Am I in a show right this second? What's the next show? And if I'm not, am I not good enough? Or is there a point where you can say, I'm going to take a couple weeks off and golf, or I'm going to just, you can't do that. Is there an opening for you time, or is it a constant grind until you officially take an official break? You can't just take a couple weeks off.
No, you can't. That's a great question. I think that's the conversation that I'm trying to teach these kids to be able to manage in their heads. That question is there no matter what. I was on Broadway and Wicked. I remember it was nearing the end of my contract, and I was like, was this a fluke? Am I an imposter? Am I good enough? Am I ever going to be in another Broadway show? That anxiety and that conversation is always in your head. And it really is up to you, especially when you get into the industry, to just remind yourself who you are and surround yourself with people to remind yourself who you are. And kind of what I was talking about before, once you find that inner validation of like, what do I want? The industry is so out of your control, and you're going into rooms with people who are sitting behind the table that have the power to say you get this part or not. Right. So once you start going into rooms and saying, I felt great about that. That was amazing. That was exactly what I wanted to do. You get power back and you start to be happier. So you start to define your own version of success. And that's really what I'm trying to teach these kids. I'm teaching them skill. I'm teaching them craft. But even after college, if you don't get into the college you want, whatever that is, you have to define your own idea of success, because the theater industry will define it for you. They'll say CMU is the best college out there. It's not for everybody. Right. It's specific to certain people. Like I needed it because I needed someone to be like, this is step one, this is step two, I'm going to hold you accountable, this is what you need to do. For other people, it's not the best school. Like it's such a subjective industry, and these kids will have more success when they understand their power and what they can offer and what they want. When I started walking into rooms being like, I don't know if you're going to cast me or not, but I feel really good about this choice, instead of I'm trying to be what you want me to be. Right. I had way more success. And it's constant though. And once you kind of decide, all right, this industry is for me and what I want, yes, you'll feel less guilty if you take a week off and you go on vacation. I remember, when I first started, I would never leave New York. I missed weddings. I missed things of my family's because
you think you're holding on to something.
Yes. And I was like, if I'm gone for one day, I might miss this audition, which will lead me to this. Yeah. But I started to lose my happiness in the industry because I was constantly saying like, what do you guys need me to be? What do you want me to be? I could be anything you want to be. And that's just, it's not powerful. It's not individual.
Okay. So let's talk about Wicked real quick.
Yeah.
So you're Fiyero, which is the lead guy in Wicked.
Yeah.
You're not just, a guy, on stage with the twirling stuff around. You are the lead guy, right?
Sure.
Was that audition process tough?
Yeah. So I auditioned for Wicked. I was auditioning for the tour at first because they're very specific. They want you to do the tour before you do Broadway.
Interesting.
So I was auditioning for the tour with actually the kid who was my understudy, a friend of mine in Sound of Music. He was my understudy for Rolf. And we were both auditioning for it. And it just didn't go my way. We made it to the finals. It was me and him. And I remember like holding on to it because I was like, this is it. Like I sang Dancing Through Life for Stephen Schwartz at my CMU junior cabaret. Okay. And I remember him being like, this is great. So I was just, I knew it was my time. I knew it. I felt it. It wasn't my time. Right. So after that, that was an interesting year. I felt really depressed and just out of it. And I remember them saying like, it's just not his time. He's right for it. We're going to like, we feel like we're going to get him in there. It's just not his time. A year went by and I was like, whatever. And then I got a call that it was for Wicked.
Yeah.
You know, and I put it out of my mind. I was like, they're never going to give me this part.
So you stay inside their mind. Is that kind of how that works sometimes where they say, well, maybe not this time, but we'll call you? That's
what the whole auditioning process is. These kids think it's, sorry, these kids, I sound so mad, but people think it's, did I get the job or did I not get the job? It's not what it's about. It's about, creating relationships in the room with people, putting on good auditions enough so they trust you with the part. My manager would always say it's about staying in the room. It's not about getting the part. It's just about staying in the room. And it's true. Yeah. If they keep calling you back and calling you in for different projects, you're doing something right. It's just when it's your time, when it's the right part, when it's not. And that's very true. And it's something I didn't believe in until I got that call a year later. Wow. And I was like, I didn't even think they remembered, right. You know? So I got the call a year later to go to Broadway because it was just my time. I think I fit with the alphabet that was going on at that time.
Who was the alphabet at that time?
Jenny DeNoia. She was the one who she's done the most productions of Wicked in different international and tours. She's unbelievable. So it was cool to have somebody like that kind of mentor me and just ground me as I was making my Broadway debut because it was extremely nerve-wracking, especially in something like Wicked. I just felt a lot of pressure.
Who was your Glinda?
So my Glinda was Carrie St. Louis, and then halfway through, Kara Lindsay came in, who was also a CMU grad, and they both were just great. The three principals, it was just a great environment, and they made me feel really, again, grounded. I was so, I don't know. There's something about Broadway and just maybe the stigma of it that I was prepared, but it's just so huge in my mind and like in actors' minds that when you make your Broadway debut, it's pretty bonkers.
So to get to my question, I started about 8 minutes ago. In the
we
song,
have 3 hours.
I know. Okay. No, Peter's like, there's not 3 hours. Now in the song, As Long As You're Mine.
Yeah.
There's clearly some physical interaction between Fiyero and Elphaba. Mm-hmm. She's painted green. Mm-hmm. Fiyero is not. Mm-hmm. How do you end up green? It just doesn't look like it from the stage, or is there some kind of coating that goes on the makeup?
Yeah,
that makes it, you can't get it on. I don't understand it. I watch it and I look for it, but I'm like, okay, this girl's purely green. That's my off the topic subject.
Well, Mac made a specific green makeup for Wicked.
Okay.
So Mac is a makeup company, and they made like the specific green. They also set it too, I think, with powder, but she's not fully green. She has green sleeves, like a costume sleeve to here. So just her hands are green and her whole face.
Yeah.
And that girl, I feel bad. That girl is green.
But there's a kissing thing.
There is a kissing thing. I don't think it ever.
This is
really
not something that came up.
No, because I went in there. I was like the 10th, 11th Fiyero. They already had this figured out by the time I got in there. Yeah. No, it never was an issue. The biggest thing is at the end, spoiler alert, is when Fiyero turns into the Scarecrow. Right. The show blacks out. You have truly 5 seconds to run off and get your makeup off because they don't want you to bow with the Scarecrow makeup. So your dresser's there and he's just like rubbing your face super hard to get this makeup off. That was the only thing. But yeah, the green is probably so good that it stays on her for weeks. Like she'll just come into rehearsal or come into the show the next day. Her scalp is green.
Yeah, that's what I kind of was thinking. Like there's so much of a commitment to that. And so, and I want to talk about the collective, but I told you I was going to ask you some
no.
questions. Okay.
This is good.
So 8 shows a week.
Woof.
Is that as hard as it sounds?
Harder than it sounds.
So what day are you normally dark?
A summertime schedule is you do 1 Friday, 2 Saturday, 2 Sunday. You have Monday off. You go back Tuesday. It is truly harder than it sounds. It is the Olympics of musical theater. And I don't think our bodies or our voices specifically are meant to be doing that. It's like why in opera they take days off and they only have like 3 performances a week. They also sing without a microphone. But I don't really think our bodies are meant to do that much.
How long were you Fierro?
I was Fierro for a little over a year. They switch the principals out every year.
Okay. That's just automatic. Okay. So then you said you felt like you maybe weren't good enough, but that's the standard, Michael. That's what they do.
Yes.
They replace these people. That's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Everyone turning you resignations. They don't have to fire you.
Yeah. They keep it fresh.
Yeah. So 8 shows a week.
Oof.
Let me ask you this. It's funny that you say that every single time I say 8 shows a week. But
it's a visceral reaction.
I'm sure.
I remember it.
Yeah. Your show isn't until at night normally. So, I mean, during the day, you probably sleep till like 1 or something like that. And then you get up, get something to eat, exercise, whatever. And you got to get right back to the stage and do it. And would you roll in like 10 minutes before curtain or?
Not me. No, I would get there like, cause your call time's only a half hour before.
I know.
Which is wild.
Yeah.
I would get there at least like an hour and a half cause I would go to the gym that was next to the theater. And then I would just, I don't know. Again, I'm anxious. So like I have to be in the space. Yeah. I have to settle into it. I'll feel thrown on if I just like come in and get into costume and go.
Were there some people that were like that though?
So the principals are just kind of renewed every year or so. Yeah. They want to keep it fresh, which is very fair. I don't think that's similar for the ensemble. I think the ensemble had different contracts. So even on the tour, there were people who've been there since the beginning of tour. So they just had a better regimen of like what they knew they could do and what their bodies could do. But singing for me always has felt very, I don't know, anxiety induced. So I just had to get there early and warm up.
Yeah. Did you ever felt like you were just going through the motions?
Yeah, I did. Did you
ever feel like you called yourself out and like, okay, don't do that again?
Yes, 100%. Yeah, because that's the thing people don't tell you. And I do talk to my students about this, but I was like, guys, after 3 months of doing the same show, you're gonna get bored. And they're like, no, we'll never get bored.
Right, because you think, that's my dream.
My dream. It becomes a job.
Yeah.
Which it's still a dream, but it's a job. And other things in your life are happening. Like, you know, you might go through a breakup or someone might pass away or you might have a huge audition coming up for something else. Right. There's just so many other things that you have to learn how to kind of release or let go. And for you as the actor, this is where skill comes in. This is what I'm talking about. There's kids who just want to go straight to New York from high school. And I'm like, take time to train. Because after 3 months, it is up to you as the actor to keep it fresh and keep finding new things, find new stimuli, find new presence with actors to keep the show fresh, or else it will get dull. And what they don't tell you too is we actually rehearse a lot. We rehearse probably once a month. We'll have an associate director come in and we rehearse the show.
Like just go over the show again.
Yeah, we'll do like specific notes for scenes. They'll run some text work through scenes. So they keep us on our toes. Yeah.
I assume there's like, you get to your dressing room, there's a post-it note like, hey, don't screw that up again or something like that.
Yeah, you get notes from the dance captain before every show. And they keep it really fresh, which is appreciated.
Yeah. So last question about Broadway, I promise. So the group of you, when I say the group of you, I mean professional Broadway. Are you guys a pretty close-knit group? Are you always going to see each other's shows? You're like, I'm out of here. When my show's over, I'm done. My day off, I'm not going to see a show. I want nothing to do with Broadway for a while.
It feels like high school.
Yeah.
It does.
I would think.
It's a small community. Yeah. And it feels so distant when you're in high school. You're like, Broadway. Yeah. But when you get there, especially when kids go to colleges and stuff, they'll hear about each other and then you come in New York and meet. And when you first move to New York, a lot of the actors usually move to like Washington Heights. So it feels like high school. It's very small and it's very accepting though. It does feel, I don't know, like the magic of high school theater all over again, just on a professional stage.
That the collective, you know, you do shows that are pushing kids to do things and you call it the collective. And where did all of that originate? Just that element of it, that we're going to push kids.
Yeah. So it's funny. I mean, you say this is a show for entrepreneurs, but I don't feel like an entrepreneur. I'm just an actor who is trying to really educate kids. But yes, with that came so much of branding and what do I want this to be and what a lot of new learnings for me, which has been great. We did Beauty and the Beast my senior year of high school. The minute I got to college, we were doing free scenes, and we could pick any scene. And they were from plays, and plays definitely always have high conflict, which means a lot more interesting material. And yeah, just really interesting topics, sensitive topics. So the shift was shocking to me. And what I learned is I always do want to push kids, but it's not in the effort of trying, people have been like, oh, you're trying to be cool, or you're trying to do different things. Sure. But I really want to have them explore just higher conflict material, or maybe a material that they will do in college in a safe space, in a space that I can say like, hey, if you guys feel uncomfortable, tell me. We do not have to push this. If you don't want to swear, we'll change the words. It is the safest space possible.
Right.
I'm never pushing them. I'm always asking them what they feel and what they want from it. And the minute they kind of set in that space and explore that material, they're hooked. And they're like, because high school theater is its own, in terms of schools, it's its own thing, and they have to worry about like the parents and everything that they're performing for in the school district, which is fair. Mm-hmm. That isn't the craft of theater, and that's not what they're going to do in college. And as they explore, even if they don't go to college, if they go to private classes, like as they explore this whole craft, especially within plays are just high conflict. What that means is like really sensitive content, and not triggering per se, but yeah, maybe swearing, maybe things that are like, oh,
right.
And it's not, the goal isn't to just be like, hey, do this is cool. It's really to make them understand it, and mainly understand the why of why people are writing this, and what it can do to audiences as a social justice. When you put up this play, what does that mean, right? Like we did punk rock, right? And the reason I chose punk rock, it's about a school shooting, which, as I even say that, is, it makes my body tense up, is I started teaching at Lincoln Park, and being in the room doing those drills with the kids was so scary, and so much more, it just opened my eyes, as opposed to my prior experience of watching it on the news. It felt, like I had a little wall there. So my goal with that, and what we all, like, we start on a table doing text work and talking about the why of the show, was to have, especially their parents, like, experience a more visceral understanding of what they go through every day. And we started with the sense of like, does any, like, even there happened to be that robocall at Central of the school shooter. After that happened, we were like a month into rehearsal, and I was like, what do you guys feel? Like, we can not show this to people. We can keep rehearsing on it. They have the power in that scenario, and it's not about me. It's about them and what I can do for them. Like, yes, I was on Broadway and everything, and I have great experience to educate them, but it's called The Collective because it's not about me. It's about a group of people who are really trying to create the same goals, and we believe in theater the same way, and we're trying to just like create the next generation of like real young artists.
Right.
So
no, it's a really great avenue for the kids who, again, are considering doing this beyond high school.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, certainly you're probably not going to have every performer at your collective, at the collective, that are going to go on to that, but that it gives them a better insight into, again, I can only draw on my own experience, but I think back, when I was in high school, I'm like, okay, well, the guy who's the lead in my show, he'll probably end up on Broadway, right? Because he had the lead here at Peters Township High School. So clearly he's the best, and I look at these kids, and we keep saying these kids, but I see these performers that go through the collective, and I'm just blown away by them. And I'm back into that mind frame of like, well, that kid's going to Broadway. I know that kid, from that. And no, punk rock was one of the things that I thought about because obviously there's a big ending scene with my daughter involved that, that was very clear to me that why someone who, like yourself, a background in teaching and a bunch of students would want to present that, because this is what they're seeing. This is what they're imagining almost could be what happens to them in that situation. So that was a very moving thing. And that was the first time I went, okay, they're pushing things here. And that's good. That's a good thing, I think. And then, of course, you did the all-female Jesus Christ Superstar this past fall, and that was interesting. Did you get any backlash for that?
Yeah, we did, which I appreciate. And
Sure.
that's what
Yeah.
theater is for. It's to create conversation. I'm not presenting theater to say, hey, this is what I believe and this is what you should believe. I like to present theater as a question and say, what did you think about this? Did you like this? Did you not? You don't have to like this. It was mainly for that specific choice was mainly for those young female identifying actors to have really meaty roles that aren't usually written in musical theater for women. Women are usually like the love interest, or they kind of just, there's less substance, but I wanted them to explore what this meant, doing it as all female identifying. And yes, we did receive backlash. It's a very touchy subject, which I understand. And I wasn't trying to comment on the religious aspect of it at all, even though that just goes with the context. But I was trying to see it as like a human experience. And yeah, I appreciate the backlash. I appreciate people voicing their opinions. I think that's what theater is. Theater is constantly a question through text, and it's a mirror up to the audience, and it's saying, what do you think about this?
Yeah. And that's and like you said before about a different subject, it means you're making waves. That's what's wrong with that.
Yeah.
They're talking about you, and
Yeah.
that's, and not like, again, it's not being talked about for the sake of being talked about, but the fact that it touched a nerve, that's what theater should do.
I agree. And that's like that's what really struck me in college about theater is there is theater for entertainment, and that is great. That is so valid. The theater I love and I want to keep exploring and creating, especially within Pittsburgh, is social justice. And what does this mean and why? And why are we still triggered by this? Why are we still watching this? And at the end of the day, like you said, it is educational. Like my program is supposed to help actors grow. And yes, I can see where they're stifled in high school or things like that, because I don't know. I don't know the reasons why, but the only way they're going to grow is by getting new parts and pushing parts that they won't usually play. It's the only way to stretch yourself, because we all have those colors inside us, and they may not be as prevalent as others. And it just takes one person to say like, hey, I want you to try this because I think you can do this.
Yeah.
That's it.
No, I mean, I said that to my wife, like, just think about this resume, being able to say that you got to play Judas. And I mean, that it says that you have some range.
Yeah.
And I guess resume, anytime your resume can be full with a lot of variety. If you're always playing, the love interest and whatnot, then okay, you got it. You can do that part. But to be able to say I was Judas in this show and then I was, Wendell in this. And so it's, no, I really do love what you do there. Question I was going to ask you, before I even signed up to do this podcast, how do you think I did in American Idiot? Did you think did I bring the house down, or were you surprised at how good I was?
No. Are you kidding me?
So just a little background. A friend of ours, one of the students there, Brady Opal, was directing American Idiot. And I assume you know this, but 2 days before opening night, he calls me up and he said, hey, I decided to add this new character to the show. He said, would you come be a part of the show? I'm like, what? He's like, I said, just like walk on, walk off. He's like, yeah, kind of like that. Like, okay.
Sort of.
So
to stay on the whole show.
So I get there and he's like, you're going to be the guy who is watching the whole thing play out for the entire 2 hours. So you're going to just sit in this chair and then you can walk around freely and you can just be the guy watching your life play out. I said, do I have any lines? He said, no. And then he added lines. And then, which I did not ask for. I'm like, I don't know, Brady. I don't know about this. And then you came in, you're like, Mr. Redford, you're really great. You always call Mr. Redford. But you're like, you're really good. I'm like, maybe I am really good at this.
You are, because you know what you did? I remember this specifically. You came in, you were asking questions. Like, how beautiful is that? Like, you were asking really specific questions about the humanity of what this person is involved in. And that's what theater is. And I tell my actors that all the time. I'm like, the best actors are just the ones who ask the most questions.
Yeah.
Because it is a human art form. And we're just trying to understand the opinion, the expectation. I could talk about
what about directable? Is that a big deal? Not about me, but like in general, like go back to college auditions. I would think that you go into the audition, if you come in as a finished product, they don't want you.
Exactly. The college audition is an interview for you as a person. And you have to remember, they're looking at a student for the next 4 years. Right. They're not just looking for like, hey, is this kid good enough to go to Broadway?
Right.
They really want somebody who loves and each school wants something different, right? But that's what I'm trying to teach as well, is that it's more than can you sing, can you act natural. There's a lot of skill work, especially now, because these kids are training like this, like the collective everywhere when they're younger. And I just wanted to keep harping on that. But yes, it's an interview. So if you do give the sense that you're not adaptable or flexible, I do think they'll probably think, what can we even do for you? You know?
Right.
So that's a huge, people say this all the time, and it's really true. People will continue to work with you if you are a kind, nice person. That is deeply true, because it's an experience. You want to have somebody who's good in the room.
Because you're spending a lot of time together. Too.
Exactly.
I mean, a lot.
Yes.
And so if they don't like you off the bat, that can really sink you. So you should go into every audition like, either like just a great friend or just someone that they can get along with very easily, I'm assuming.
Exactly.
Have you ever met Lin-Manuel Miranda?
He probably would not even remember me, but we did a concert with this group called the Skivvies in New York City at 54 Below. And I remember sitting in the green room, and I think he was talking about Hamilton then. He was talking about, because he was writing it, but he did this Outkast rap. It was unreal. He goes to a different space. And I've heard that too about rappers. Like when they rap, they kind of like black out.
They have to.
And they go to a different space.
Well, they're thinking like 3-4 stanzas ahead. How do you not go to a different place?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So he was talking potentially about Hamilton before Hamilton was Hamilton.
Yeah, because and again, why his stuff is so successful, in my opinion, is that he creates it out of passion and with people he trusts and knows, and it comes from his heart. So I think, I forget if it was Hamilton or In the Heights, but I think they started rehearsing like in a church, like underground, like a basement, because it's not about, there's like these beautiful rehearsal studios now, Studio 42, and it's where all the big Broadway upcoming shows rehearse, and you rehearse like with a set. And sometimes, like, even I remember we were doing the Cher show and MJ was doing their workshop, Michael Jackson the musical, and they were doing their workshop with mics, like this is like out of town or anything. So just the level of production that people are expecting, especially now, even in rehearsal, it's very produced. It's just what Broadway is right now. People aren't going to put money into things they don't think will sell.
Right.
So even when you rehearse now, it's produced. It's crazy. So Lynn's stuff is so grounded and just starting with passion. That's why you feel it. You feel it when you watch it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's kind of missing from Broadway right now.
Huh.
You leave, it's entertaining for sure, but I think audiences are missing that visceral feeling of whatever, but they leave feeling inspired or
because it's all production again. It's back to, you walk in, it's exactly what you want to be entertained by. You walk out, you're not changed. And that's what you'd like to see some more of.
Yes, for sure. I get it too. Listen, we came off the pandemic. Things are crazy with just producing things. It takes a lot to produce a show, even at the Collective, I wish we had more, I wish government put more, subsidy in arts and things like this, like what we're doing. I wish, like our tuition could be cheaper. I wish, but it all is for it to just run, and it goes right back into the company, because it just takes so much to produce even a show at the Collective, which are smaller, intimate shows. Right. So yeah, I just feel like people are writing now with the idea of low risk. No one wants to take risks. We just want to entertain. We want people to pay a crazy amount of money for tickets, which shouldn't be that much money. And we just need some kind of reward for it. But audiences, I do feel like they're sensing the idea of, that was great, I was very entertained. I don't need to see that again.
But maybe it's come back and it goes full circle potentially, that maybe it goes back to community theater and go back and I think that's amazing. I think the cycle of it all is great. And so we are coming up on the end here. This has been exactly as fun as I expected it to be, and actually more so. This is awesome. I've really enjoyed talking
me
to you.
Me too.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, is this where I hand you your first Broadway contract?
Oh, I was going to say, I have great news. Lynn's here to talk to you. He wants to put you in his next show. No. Would I love to be on Broadway? Sure. Am I going to be on Broadway? Probably not. We'll see. You never know.
We'll see.
I don't know. I mean, if they ever did American Idiot and they want to have the originator of that character come out, then maybe we'll Brady Oprah.
I'll make some calls.
So, thank you very much for being here, man. I appreciate
thanks for having me.
This is awesome. Michael Campayno, thanks for checking us out.
For more information on Michael and the Collective, you can check them out online at wearethecollectivepgh.com. That's wearethecollectivepgh.com.
strategy.com. A big thank you to Michael Campayno for joining us today. You've been watching and listening to The Story with Kevin Redford. Please take a moment to like and subscribe and share everywhere you can. Part of the Mentrepreneur Network, powered by Strategy.